The thing that played with my feet at night wasn't my sister. I'm holding a picture of the thing that lived in my sister's closet. It's a Polaroid, the color is washed out by 3 decades of time, but the image is just as sharp as the day I found it. It's mostly just the attic room, bleached white by the camera's flash. But if you look closely at the closet door, cracked open just a sliver, you can see it. 2 points of light reflecting the flash like an animal's. And below them, gripping the edge of the white door, are the fingers. Long, pale, and thin as reeds. It all started because of a pinky toe. My twin sister, Lyra, told me about it, one blistering August afternoon. We were 7. We'd just moved into a 2-story house with an attic that smelled like old paper and cedar. It sat at the end of a quiet cul-de-sac, shadowed by a single, grotesque oak tree, whose branches scraped against the windows like fingernails. The previous owners had converted the attic into a bedroom, and Lyra, always the braver one, had claimed it as her occasional escape from our shared room. "It comes out when I'm almost asleep," she'd said, her voice a conspiratorial whisper. We were sitting in the overgrown backyard, the gnarled oak looming over us. It tugs on my littlest toe, the one that always hangs off the edge of the bed. "What does?" I asked, swatting at a mosquito. Lyra's eyes, the same shade of green as mine, went wide. She leaned in so close I could smell the bubble gum on her breath. "A gnome," she breathed. "I think he lives in the closet." She then threw her hands up with a loud "bow" and grabbed my shoulders, making me jump. She skipped away, a whirlwind of summer dress and pigtails, singing that stupid nursery rhyme. "This little piggy went to market. This little piggy stayed home." Her voice trailed off as she disappeared around the side of the house, leaving me alone under the watchful gaze of that twisted tree. Lyra loved to scare me. She was the storyteller, the one who saw monsters and shadows and magic in the mundane. A gnome that tickled your feet seemed exactly like something she'd invent. Still, as a gust of wind rattled the oak's branches, sending a cascade of skeletal shadows dancing across the lawn, I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the weather. I ran inside. A week later, on a dare for myself, I decided to sleep in the attic. I dragged my sleeping bag up the narrow, curving staircase, my head full of fantasies about secret troll villages and friendly sprites. The room itself was actually pleasant. A single dormer window looked out into the oak's canopy, and a warm yellow lamp on the nightstand cast a cozy glow. It felt safe. I read for an hour, lost in a world of dragons and wizards, until my eyelids grew heavy. I switched off the lamp, plunging the room into a deep, velvety darkness, punctuated only by the sliver of moonlight filtering through the leaves outside. I wriggled down into my sleeping bag, my bare feet sticking out of the bottom. I was just on the edge of sleep, in that soft, hazy place between wakefulness and dreams, when I felt it. A delicate, cool pressure on my pinky toe. A gentle, insistent tug. My eyes snapped open. For a second, I was paralyzed. Then I heard a soft, dry, skittering sound on the wooden floor, followed by a muffled giggle that was unmistakably Lyra's. I sat bolt upright just in time to see a small, dark shape scramble out of the room and down the stairs. It looked like she was wearing Dad's black bathrobe. That little witch. The next morning at the breakfast table, I confronted her. "Okay, you got me. I saw you run out last night after you pulled my toe." Lyra just looked at me over her mountain of cereal, her expression one of perfect innocence. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said, her cheeks bulging with frosted flakes. She was a phenomenal liar. I knew I had to get her back. The following weekend, when she was sleeping up in the attic, I armed myself with a bag of plastic spiders from the dollar store. I crept up the stairs, each step a carefully placed masterpiece of silence. The floorboards didn't even whisper. I slipped into her room and planted my plastic army under her pillow, beneath the blanket by her feet, scattered on the floor around her bed. I imagined her waking up in a panic, her screams of terror, a sweet symphony of revenge. But the next morning, there was nothing. No screams, no accusations. She came down for breakfast and acted like nothing had happened. Confused, I went back to our shared bedroom. and there they were. All of the fake spiders piled in a neat little mound right next to my bed. All except one. One was missing. At the breakfast table, I stared at her, waiting for the triumphant smirk, the knowing glance. Nothing. She just hummed to herself while she buttered her toast. She was good. She was so good. She'd not only foiled my prank, but had turned it back on me, and was now holding one spider in reserve, a tiny plastic threat she could deploy at any moment. But she never did. The spider scare never came. For years, that little mystery lingered at the back of my mind. The flawless execution of her counter-prank felt impossible. How had she known? How had she moved them without waking me? We grew up. High school swallowed us whole and spat out two very different people. The attic, once a place of occasional escape, became Lyra's permanent domain. She painted the walls a brooding dark blue and covered them with posters of bands I'd never heard of. Her friends started coming over, kids with dyed hair and perpetually bored expressions, who would troop up to the attic and close the door, leaving me to the silence of the rest of the house. I was never invited up. Lyra was drifting away from me, caught in the current of her own secret teenage world. Our parents, lost in their own orbits, barely noticed. Sometimes she wouldn't come home on a weekend, and I'd be the only one to realize it. The only proof I had that she even still lived there was the sound I'd hear late at night, a soft pitter-patter from the ceiling above my new private bedroom, the sound of her pacing. In a strange way, it was a comfort. It meant she was home, safe in her fortress. One Saturday night near Halloween, I had my own friend over. Her name was Sona, my chess partner from school. With Lyra gone for the weekend at a party, I assumed I offered Sona the attic room. We stayed up late, playing chess and talking about boys until our voices were hoarse. Sona went up to the attic, and I went to my room, falling asleep almost instantly. Sometime in the dead of night, my bedroom door creaked open. A figure stumbled in, silent and swift, and dove into Lyra's old, empty bed, pulling the covers completely over their head. I groggily registered it as Lyra, home early from her party, probably drunk and wanting to avoid the squeaky attic stairs. I rolled over and went back to sleep. The next morning, Sona came down to the kitchen looking pale. Her eyes were wide, dark circles smudged beneath them. "Something pulled my toe last night," she said, her voice barely a whisper. Before I could process it, I saw Lyra shuffling down the main staircase, wearing the same clothes from Friday. The pieces clicked into place. "Okay, you got Sona too," I said, turning to Lyra with an exasperated smile. "Very funny." Lyra just stared at me, her brow furrowed in genuine confusion. She looked exhausted, hungover. "What are you talking about?" "The gnome," I said, gesturing to Sona. "You pulled her toe last night." Lyra's face was a blank canvas. "I just got home 5 minutes ago," she said flatly. "I stayed at Ashley's." We stood there in a triangle of awkward silence. I looked from Lyra's confused face to Sona's terrified one. Sona mumbled something about needing to get her stuff and practically sprinted up the stairs. She came down a minute later, her overnight bag clutched in her hand, and left without another word. She never came over again. She even found a new chess partner at school. The party years faded. Lyra, to everyone's surprise, got serious about her studies. After graduation, she left for a university 5 hours upstate. The attic room was empty again, and so I moved in. I turned our old shared bedroom into an art studio and hauled my life up the curving stairs into the space that had been my sister's sanctuary for so long. The room felt different now, quieter. The first night, as I was unpacking, I opened the nightstand drawer. Inside was a dusty, forgotten copy of The Hobbit that I'd lost years ago. Sitting on top of it was a small stack of Polaroids, and nestled beside them, coiled like a dormant insect, was the missing plastic spider from my failed prank a decade earlier. I jumped, then laughed out loud. That bitch. After all these years, she'd finally gotten me. The long con. It was brilliant. I almost called her right then and there to concede defeat, but decided to let her savor it. I called her the next day. "The spider in the nightstand," I said, no preamble. "Very impressive. You finally got me." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "What spider?" "Come on, Myra." "The spider. The one that went missing from my prank." You put the pile next to my bed, didn't you? Her voice was tight. I don't know what you're talking about. I pushed, laughing. Yes, you do. You were always so good at it. Elena, stop. Her tone had changed. It was sharp, brittle. Just admit it, I pressed. The game too fun to let go. I did not put spiders next to your bee. Deanne it, she yelled, her voice cracking. The sudden violence of it shocked me into silence. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then, we both burst into nervous, hollow laughter. But I didn't believe her. I couldn't. The alternative was too strange. As I hung up the phone, another memory surfaced, unbidden. A conversation with my dad, right after Lyra had left for college and I'd announced my intention to take over the attic. He'd looked strangely pale. You know, he'd said, lowering his voice, a few years back, your mother and I were watching TV. I got up to use the bathroom, and I saw something out of the corner of my eye. He stared at the landing of the main staircase, which was directly across from his bedroom door. It darted out of your room and went up the stairs to the attic. It was dark, but it moved, fast. He looked at me, his eyes wide. It moved like a spill of ink, Alina, not running, just flowing. Maybe it was Chompers. I'd offered, naming our fat, lazy cat. It was bigger than any damn cat, he'd snapped, with a finality that shut down the conversation. That night, I stayed up late, rereading the old copy of The Hobbit I'd found. I must have fallen asleep with the book on my chest, because the next thing I knew, I was being jolted awake. Something had just pulled my pinky toe. It wasn't a gentle tug this time. It was a firm, cold, dry grip. A sharp yank, followed by the faint sound of a knuckle cracking. My eyes flew open. The room was dark, but my vision was just clear enough to see the closet door, which I'd left wide open, slowly swinging shut. It closed with a soft, definitive click. For a moment, I lay there, trapped in that disorienting state between sleep and terror, unsure if I'd dreamed it. But the phantom sensation of cold fingers on my skin was undeniable. I went back to sleep with the lights on. The next day, on my way to class, I found myself humming under my breath. It took me a full block to realize what it was. This little piggy went to market. During my lunch break, my hands shaking slightly, I pulled out the stack of Polaroids I'd found in the nightstand. There were 7 of them. They were all pictures of the attic room, taken at night with the flash on. The first 6 were just empty shots of the bed, the desk, the window. They were pointless, creepy. Why would anyone take these? Then I got to the last one. It was another picture of the room, the flash casting harsh shadows. But this one was different. It was taken from the bed, aimed at the closet. The door was cracked open, just a few inches. And in that vertical slice of absolute blackness, the camera's flash had found something. It caught the wet gleam of 2 eyes, set too far apart, looking out sideways, not from a face, but from a patch of darkness. Below them, pale fingers, impossibly long and thin like bleached twigs, were curled around the edge of the door, their knuckles like knots in a rope. They weren't human fingers, and I finally understood. It was never a game. Lyra wasn't the prankster. She was the victim. For all those years, she hadn't been shutting me out. She had been shutting it in. The pitter-patter of feet I'd heard wasn't her pacing. She was trying to keep it from coming downstairs, from coming for me.